I'm Chris with MLC CAD Systems. I'm going to get us started today with our webinar. I know we were supposed to do this live, but due to current circumstances, we've had to switch this to an online webinar. And I want to take a moment first to introduce myself to anybody who hasn't met me before. So I go by Chris. I work out the Atlanta office. I'm in my 12th year with MLC CAD Systems now. And I have a wide range of manufacturing experience. And as Bill mentioned, for MLC, I specialize in design automation, technical publications, and data management. If you are familiar with the SolidWorks products, you'll know that now we have a whole suite of tools to help you with anything that you design, manufacture, anything from electrical, PCB, mechanical. We have some great high-end simulation tools for design validation. We have some great communication tools, as well as a lot of project data management tools, which I'm going to show you a little bit later on. To begin with, I'd like to get into the technical communication tools, and in particular, this one called Composer. Now, SolidWorks Composer is a tool that allows you to create work instructions, animations, and interactive content. This is a traditional publication, or this is a couple of traditional publications where we have grainy looking images and a little bit of text. What we're proposing with SolidWorks Composer is something that looks a little bit more like this. This is leveraging our 3D CAD data. And we're using that in Composer to create these much clearer illustrations, reduce the amount of text, and add collaborative actors, things like arrows and callouts and so on. So let me go back to where we were. The other method that a lot of people use for technical communication is video. And here's a traditional video here using a handheld video camera. You may have pulled things up on YouTube in the past where, basically you get instructions on how to do something like maintenance or repair. This young man on the screen is showing us how to find a leak in a vacuum hose. And as you can see, again, the camera is pretty shaky. It's pretty grainy. It's a little bit hard to follow what's going on. And of course, there's always a danger of following incorrect instructions, as this young man just found out. So instead of using the handheld cameras for still shots and videos, we are, again, proposing you use Composer. And again, using our 3D CAD data, leveraging that information you've already created to create great looking, clean animations such as this. So with SolidWorks Composer, there's a very simple workflow in order to create this documentation. You would simply collect the information you need, CAD data. That usually is in the form of geometry, could be an assembly structure as well. And usually those files have what we call metadata, custom properties. You would bring that into SolidWorks Composer and you would create the great looking images, animations, and then you would author that content into a format such as PDF, AVI, or something of that nature. You could then distribute that information to end users, field service, and so on. If there's any updates to the documentation, all you would need to do is simply re-import the CAD data into SolidWorks Composer and then simply export the Composer information back out to those other file formats. I'm going to show you 4 key areas of SolidWorks Composer, starting off with exploded views. And here I want to replace this, the grainy looking image, with something like this that's much cleaner and easier to understand. So going into Composer itself, it's a 3D interface. You would simply import your CAD files into Composer. There's a number of known file formats that it will bring in, as well as some neutral formats such as STEP and IGES. So whatever your CAD data is in right now, you could bring it into Composer and you could start leveraging some of the tools I'm about to show you. The files themselves come in the orientation in which they were last saved and the assembly that was last saved in the CAD environment. You would bring it into Composer and then all you need to do is start snapping images. So here we'll go ahead and create an image of what's on the screen. Rename that. We're going to call it battery removal. And as easy as that, we're able to create a nice clean still shot. You could then bring that out of Composer and start using it in your publications. Any changes that you make, you would simply update the view and it'll recapture the view with those changes. Next, I want to explode this thing. So I want to move some things around, and I'm going to use my, my transform. Now, as I mentioned, it brings in the assembly structure. So here we're seeing that the assembly structure is in the tree. I'm just going to use this to make my selections, and I can pull some components here out into space. So I can use the assembly tree to do that. I can also select components from the interface. So here we'll use the cover, and we'll just select it and move it out. Then there's a gasket behind it. We'll pull that out. And then there is finally the battery that we can then place into space. So all you would do is you would simply manipulate your geometry, move it around, get it in the orientation you like, and then all you need to do is simply capture that view, and if you want, you can keep doing it a little bit at a time to simply update when needed. Now, you may also want to add some what we call collaborative actors to show the user basically what your instructions are. So in this example here, I'm going to add a couple of arrows that show where these screws go. And I'm going to snap it to the axes on the middle of these. And let me just zoom in so I can get that correct. Okay, and we'll go ahead and pull that all the way out. I need the same for this little arrow here, so we'll go ahead and pull that one out as well. And these are what's known as collaborative actors. So these are, really informational that are on the screen. Now, anything that we add, we can control the position and the properties by just simply selecting them. And then over here on the left-hand side, we can use the properties to manipulate things like opacity. In this case here, I want the arrows to go through the geometry and rather than being on top. I also want to change the head shape and make it a little bit sharper. And then I may also want to change the color to something like blue. And then, like I say, you would just simply update that view when you get what you need. Next, we'll add some labels to this. So we've got some components that are displayed. You can see that when I click on these, the label actually changes to the file name. So this gets us into the metadata that I mentioned. So these files actually have file names from the CAD environment. When these files are brought into Composer, then they actually bring that information with them. So now we have an exploded view with some collaborative actors and some callouts. So just as simple as that, we're able to create our exploded views. There's no picture taking. We're just leveraging that 3D CAD data that we already assembled and completed. And we've got nice, clear-looking images now that we can use in our publications. The next step that I want to cover is how we would handle updates to our documentation. Traditional documentation using Composer would look something like this, where we have our images brought into something like a Word document, and then we could simply save this out as a PDF, and that's ready for distribution. In this Word document here, just go to the info, you will see that I've got links to those image files. So if those image files in particular was to be updated, these links would update for this Word document, and then I could resave it out as a new PDF. Let's go back into Composer. Now there are a few views that I made earlier, so I'm just going to bring those in. And what these views do is they walk us through the process of maintaining the tooltips. So it's basically a service instruction of how to strip this guy down and get all the way to those tooltips, which is a replaceable part that needs maintaining. And step by step, it basically shows how to disassemble this thing. So let's set up the scenario. We have a new design. This assembly has been through an engineering change, and this handle has gone to what we call a flat bar rather than a bent tube. Now, in order to update the Composer document, all I have to do is go to File, Update, Composer document, and then point it back to the original file that we used. So this is a SolidWorks assembly that's been updated with an engineering change. And we're simply going to tell Composer that we want to update this document with that new engineering changed assembly. Now, while this process is running through, let's just talk about how you would handle this in a traditional environment. So you have basically assemblies that you bring into your technical publication. You would create your still shot images, and then you'd start your publication. But then an engineering change happens. Now, handling that has always been a tricky scenario. In SolidWorks Composer, however, all we need to do is point back to the native assembly, and as you can see, it's updated all the views that had the handle in it, and it's brought in the new handle, and it's left all the original views that we created alone. Now, our job would be to output these images so that we can use them in our publication. So we would do that by going to Workshops, High Resolution Image. Here we're going to output multiple image, and we're just going to simply output all of those views. We'll do a Save As and replace the original views that are right here, and we'll just simply save over top of all of them. Now that outputs all of those views to that drive, and if we open up the publication now, you can see that all of those views have updated accordingly. So that's how we would handle the change process in SolidWorks Composer. Like I said, this makes the job of updating very easy when your engineering data has gone through some design changes. Next, we're going to take a quick look at animations. We saw this guy go through his animation and things didn't quite go the way he wanted. We want to create something a little bit more like this, which allows us to simply take our CAD data and create something that's much, much cleaner. So back in Composer, in the Composer interface, I'm just going to close up the workshop for now, and I need to turn on something called my timeline. So this is where I could build my animations. A real simple way of doing this is to simply take the existing information that I have, such as my views, and drag them into the timeline at different time steps. So my view of the base view, I'll bring it in at 0. And then let's bring the remove jaws in at 3 seconds. We'll flip it over to the opposite side at 6 seconds. And then maybe we'll bring that one in at 9 seconds. So if we play this from the beginning, you can see what it does is it animates through those views. There's a lot of manipulation I could do to the geometry now to clean it up. But as simple as that, I'm able to create a very simple animation showing how my assembly flips around, what I need to take apart. And then again, I would simply go to my workshops. And in this occasion here, I'd simply output this as a video file. So again, we're reusing the images for the animation, fast creation, and we're ready to go. Next, let's take a look at interactive content. Now with SolidWorks Composer, there's a lot of interactive content that we can produce. If we go back into the software itself, I'm going to close out of this file, and I'm simply going to open another new document. So in this case here, let's go to the interactive player. And I want to clean up my timeline, so let's just get rid of that. All right, so what we have here is we have our master assembly, and then we have created these views that show bill of materials, exploded views with callouts and so on. We have a number of these views that drill all the way down into our assembly and even down to very low component levels that show bill of materials and individual components at each level. So one way you can look at this is SolidWorks Composer could actually replace the need to do 2D drawings of your assemblies with exploded views, bill of materials, and callouts. If you wanted to offload that kind of work from your engineering department onto maybe your technical communications guys, you could certainly do so. All right, so an example of this is if we go into this file right here. So this is the back end of our master assembly. Now, what I want to do here is I want to explode this guy out. I want to create a nice clean bill of materials, and I want to create some callouts, some balloon callouts for each bill of material item. So I've brought this in from the SolidWorks CAD environment. You'll notice the bill of materials is currently empty. In this drawing view here, I want to explode this guy. So I'll do a linear explode on this occasion, and we'll just pull everything out into space. All right, once we get those in position, we'll take these little screws here. Now these guys need to go back onto this component right here. And actually, we need to select them there. And on this occasion here, we're going to do a spherical explode to place those out into position. Now, every component in here needs an item for the bill of materials. So it needs an item number, and it needs a call out, and then it needs a bill of materials. So we'll go ahead and we'll highlight everything that's on the screen right now. In fact, I'm going to just clear that because I had something still selected. All right, and then if we go into workshops and the bill of material workshop, right here we can generate bill of material IDs. This, as you can see, is pulling information from the CAD files themselves. So we brought this geometry in as CAD data, and as I mentioned, it brought in also the assembly structure, which we saw on the screen. And then what we're seeing here is that metadata coming from the files themselves. So item number, part number, description, and the quantity is now being shown. We can turn on the bill of materials, which places it into our drawing interface. We can stretch, move, and replace that. I'm just going to move it here. Let's pull it down to the bottom so we can see it. Anything that's on the screen is what's considered an actor. So CAD files are considered geometry actors, whereas things like bill of materials, callouts, notes, annotations, those are what are called collaborative actors. And the BOM is no different. So for example, here, if I wanted to go into the BOM and make it clearer, I could just increase the text size. And then that way, if I increase the window, then I get a nicer looking bill of materials. It's a little bit easier to read. As far as the callouts go, again, we want to select all of our components. And now we just want to say create callouts. This will generate callouts for all of our line items. We just might have to do a little bit of cleanup there to put those in the position that we need. These three at the bottom here, I'm just going to select and bring them a little bit closer. And we'll do the same for these two up at the top. We'll just bring them into a better position. All right, so that creates our exploded view, our bill of materials, and our callouts. We did also talk about interactive content. So one example here is if I wanted to display this on a web page, either internet or intranet, then there are some tools in Composer that will allow you to create that collaboration. So for example, here I've selected the rear component, and I can make this a hotspot so that when anybody clicks on this, it actually links to another document. So from here, let's just point it back to a document that I made earlier. And let me get to where that is. Okay, and my online parts list. And what I need to do here is select the document that represents the rear end. So here, let's see, I need 4240 0201 SVG. Okay, and that now becomes a linked file when we click on this hotspot right here. Okay, back in the workshops, and I'm going to switch over to the high resolution output. Now from here, if I do a Actually, sorry, I need to go to the technical illustration output. Now from here, if I do a preview, okay, we'll let that output. All right, it actually went on my other screen. So let's bring that in and we will enable the block content. Now, one nice thing about this is you will notice that anything that I hover over highlights, and it also highlights in the BOM as well. So it's using HTML format to display this. So as I mentioned, if you wanted to show this on a like a website or intranet or anything like that, it makes a great way of displaying these first of all. And then we created a hotspot on this rear component, which as you see links me to that other file that I linked it to. And then down at this level also, I can hover over components and I can see them in the bill of materials as well. So as you can see, this is giving me a great way to create that interactive content. Let's just go ahead and close that one up. Next, I'm going to jump to another view, and there's one more tool that I would really like to show you when it comes to interactive content with Composer. So I'm going to go back to this top level view and just close out of my workshop for now. Right here on this master view, you can see I've got some shadows. There is a rendering engine in Composer to create things like ground shadows, mirrors, grids. So you can create nice looking images. If you need to go a little bit higher quality, you can turn on the rendering and you've got a few options there for different image types. The next tool I want to show you is what we call the digger tool. And let me see here, it looks like, let's go to here, let's turn on our tools. And I'm going to point this, well, actually, let me go to a different view here. Let's try this one. It's a little bit less high resolution. So if we turn on our digger tool here, all right, this is a little bit better. All right, what we can do is we can change the point of interest by simply pointing it over here. And the digger tool works like this. It's like a detail view on steroids. So I can make the detail view nice and big. I can zoom in and out of the detail view. But I also have these great tools in the top corner. So things like onion skin will allow me to peel away. So if I wanted to drill down into lower levels of my assembly, then I could simply drill down. One that I really like is the X-ray function. So if I wanted to, take a look at a component and see other components around it, then I have the option to X-ray components around. So I can see internally. And then whenever I get the view that I like, all I need to do is simply hit this little camera right here. And that saves it as a detail view that can be resized, repositioned, and then placed on my my output. And then again, just like we did for the first technical illustration, we could just simply point that one out with the technical illustration and create an output file for that one. So as you can see, with the interactive content, what it does is it allows us again to replace these grainy looking old-fashioned images and create much cleaner, nicer looking images such as this exploded view right here. So we've got document accessibility. If we was to put it onto an intranet or internal, external web page, makes it a little bit easier to get to. So let's just summarize. Exploded views in 3D via in SolidWorks Composer allowed us to create these great looking images without taking any pictures. We're just leveraging our 3D data that we already have in our CAD files. We're able to create nice, clear images, and we can use these in publications. So there's no longer any need to bring out a camera and create still shot images. And then the really cool thing is if anything changes, we have a really simple way of updating our documentation. So the documents update when the design changes. We don't have to go back and start republishing, creating new photos, creating new images, and so on. We can just update the documents that we have and just simply output the documents again. As far as animations go, First of all, we're leveraging our CAD data. We're going to bring it into Composer. We're going to create those exploded views. Then we can just drop those into our animation timeline, and we can work from there to create our animations. So there's a very simple path for creating animations to show how things interact with each other, how things are assembled, disassembled, and so on. And then finally, the interactive content gives us a great way of accessing our design in a collaborative manner. If we wanted to output any of our design work and allow people to access it, we've got a few options there for doing so. So what does this mean for you? Well, with SolidWorks Composer, you can now begin the publication during the design phase. And the reason for that is because if anything does change, you now have an easy way of updating the documentation that you've already created. There's no need to go back and start documentation over again. We've got better quality information for your customers, which is going to lead to more customer satisfaction. Looking at a grainy 2D still shot image, that's not going to create much satisfaction. So this is where you need nice, clear-looking images with nice callouts that show you exactly what to do. Overall, this is going to save you time. Saving time obviously saves you money, which is going to help your bottom line. And the overall thing is we're just going to generate documents faster. And I want to thank you for taking the time to look at SolidWorks Composer with me.